I tell a story that must never be heard twice, because it clings to a voice like a wet sheet to skin. It's about a house at the edge of our step station, where wind snaps signboards and dogs howl at empty windows. I didn't want to go, but someone called me by name from a long-dead number, with a voice I buried 5 years ago. I answered because people always answer the past before they think, and only later chase the decision with words. The line hissed, a whisper, like breath trapped in a frosted jar, mispronounced my name by a shade, as if a birthmark had shifted. Come to the embankment house before midnight. No threats, no reasons. I set the phone down, already wearing my jacket. I walked past a dead barn, rusty silos, rain-black concrete rings. The moon seemed bolted to the sky. As a child, I searched these fields for lost calves. My mother warned me not to lift certain stones. Cold ears lived beneath. I laughed then. Now I listen to the night's rustle, iron and wet grass and rot. The house stood as if holding its breath. The door was unlocked. Inside smelled of old lime wash, medicine, hot lamp dust. Moonlight lay like ash on the floor. Hollow boards rang. "I'm here," I said. Soft steps answered upstairs like hospital shoes. The banister felt sticky, as if recently licked. The corridor above was longer than the house allowed. Rooms were wrong. Furniture faced the walls, bedheads pressed to windows, mirrors lay flat like dry lakes. In one mirror, I saw myself with mouth corners lifted too high. I blinked. The reflection didn't. I backed away. It stayed close. The whisper came again, not from a throat, but from hinges and seams. I followed it to a lidless grand piano. Dust coated the strings in ruler-straight calm. My finger drew a line. A faint "A" exhaled. "Closer," the whisper said. Under the strings lay a photograph. My family, from the year my sister still breathed. Snow fell upward. My mother's eyes were shut. I touched my tiny self. From the other side, something touched my nail. The photo slid into the dark belly. "Return it," the whisper said. I reached deeper and felt wet hair coil around my wrist. Gentle as care. I tore free, leaving skin like pale snakes on the strings. Warm, quiet blood. Music began without players. The house flipped air like pages. Tires on gravel, a distant train, soft courtyard quarrels, and the breath of someone afraid yet moving forward. I entered the room where the heart should be. Empty walls showed pale rectangles where pictures had been. In the middle, a hatch. Not old, not new. An answer you shouldn't accept. I lifted it. Cold rose. No stairs, only motionless water like a mirror. My reflection's eyes were too wide. You cannot descend into water that replaces stairs, but the house could. The floor softened. I slid in like soap. The water took me without a splash, thick as heavy sleep. I walked downward through air while water stood in columns. Far above, the hatch shut. The house sighed, relieved. The cellar was concert hall large. Walls glowed like bones on an X-ray. Rows of chairs, each occupied by someone who had forgotten to leave. Not dead, seated, hands on armrests, wire-long fingers, eyes fixed on an empty stage. I recognized my physics teacher who vanished last winter, lips twitching with formulas. If the house is a closed system, my sister wasn't there. Farther, the whisper said. A thin-stand microphone waited, unplugged yet breathing. I gripped its warm metal. "Why?" I asked. The house used my voice. "To return what you took. Return what holds you. It wanted the name we abandoned at the funeral because it turned water to ice. A curtain that didn't exist lifted. On stage sat a girl in my old jacket, soaked, hair pasted to cheeks, palms dirt dark. She looked as only the left behind do. Chairs rustled behind me, heads turning toward my erased past. "You promised not to open the door," she said, voice sifted dry. "I was a child," I said. The stage trembled like a muted drum. I inhaled. "Lena," I said. Air chilled, walls dimmed, water rose 1 silent centimeter. "Lena," I said again, slower. Memory stirred. A laugh from August when hens climbed the porch and we were too timid to shoo them. I reached out. My hands grew too long yet couldn't bridge the stretched rubber of air. It smelled of wet sand and electricity. She asked me if I remembered the door's weight. I nodded. How I screamed? I nodded. How you said you'd come back? I nodded. She smiled with too many teeth. Smiles here are built from what's missing. I understood. The house feeds on non-returns. It had grown fat on mine. "I came to take you," I said. She shook her head. "No one is taken from here, only taken back." The chairs emptied. The seated approached in a half circle, footprints like fish on the carpet. A cold hand pressed my shoulder, dairy room cold. The house shifted to fit us all. Rain hiss filled the microphone. I heard the front door upstairs open. "Say aloud what you always whispered," she said. So I did. I confessed the game called Back in a Minute that lasted an eternity. How I left for school and dodged calls. How I trusted time to heal and bled myself on that idea. How I built a life of refusals and called it maturity. How train whistles felt like freedom, but were only doors slamming again. How I feared coming here, and then feared not coming more. As I spoke, water climbed to our knees. My legs didn't freeze. The house drank confession like wine. She nodded with the exactness of a judge. "Ready?" she asked when I finished. I didn't know for what. She stepped forward. The air tore. Her palms were warmer than memory. The house thundered like a train on a bridge. A wall collapsed above. Feedback shrieked white through the mic. We held on. Water to waists, to chests. People behind us laughed and cried without sound, faces blurring like chalk in rain. I thought we'd blur too, and that would be right. But the girl raised her head and told the house, "He came back." 2 words with the weight to make a house sit. The ceiling dropped to a palm's height. Walls stepped back. Chairs folded into paper boats. The microphone thinned to a needle and vanished. Water retreated 1 step. The house was letting go. We climbed. Stairs appeared where the air had been smooth. I led. She held my jacket hem like before. On each landing, I heard switches click, lamps lighting that didn't exist. At the top, ordinary human dark. The hatch stood open. Wind brought wormwood and smoke. I helped her out. Her boots printed wet ovals. Furniture sat proper again. Mirrors stood up like facts. On the threshold she stopped. Dawn's light shone through night remained. "Tell others so they don't mistake a promise for a sigh," she said. I nodded. She stepped out, her footfalls like roof drips. I tried to follow and couldn't. The house held me by an invisible staple at my jacket hem. In the corridor, people were rising from the cellar, soft as bread. I returned to the piano room. The lidless piano was somehow shut. The photograph lay on top, dry, altered, my mother's eyes open, snow falling the right way, my hand holding the girl. I sat on the sill and spoke the whole story, start to finish, without a pause, because a pause here is a wolf pit. When I ran out of air, the staple released. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door. The road home was smaller. The barn and silos had shrunk, or I had grown. My phone stayed mute, though I knew it would ring again. Words I had spoken stitched themselves into me. Stories are what the house takes instead of the living. I spoke aloud as I walked so the house would have no doubts,